President Trump addressing the riots on Capitol Hill as members of Congress prepare for a vote to impeach him. How the federal government is working to speed up the vaccine rollout and what's being done in California to rebound from a slow start. And the aftermath of those destructive waves that could once again have the OB Pier shut down for some time to come. ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
And everybody to the T thought it was totally appropriate.
President Trump claiming there was nothing wrong with his actions last week before rioters stormed Capitol Hill. Good to have you with us this midday. I'm Jim Patton. House Democrats disagreeing with the president, who they say incited the violence and who they want to remove from office. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze has the latest on their ultimatum to the president's cabinet and what comes next.
6 days after the deadly attack on the Capitol and with more threats looming, the House is gearing up to impeach President Trump for a second time. In his first public appearance since the attack, the president blasting the effort to remove him from office.
It's absolutely ridiculous. This impeachment is causing tremendous anger.
House lawmakers set to vote today on a resolution calling on Vice President Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment, which would remove Donald Trump's presidential powers. The president and vice president speaking last night for the first time since the insurrection, while most cabinet members stay silent on the possibility of removing the president from office. Assuming the vice president doesn't invoke that amendment, the House is expected to vote on impeachment as soon as tomorrow. But the effects of last week's attack already rippling far and wide. Dozens of major businesses cutting ties with Trump and his allies, who voted against the certification of the election. New England Patriots coach Bill Belichick turning down an invitation from the president to receive the Medal of Freedom, citing last week's violent events.
We want Trump!
With only 70 arrests made so far, the nationwide manhunt continues to identify the thousands of rioters. And now new evidence of more threats. The FBI sending out a bulletin warning armed protests are being planned at all 50 state capitals, leading up to Inauguration Day, January 20th. Officials in Wisconsin already boarding up the Capitol. House Democrats briefed on multiple threats against Congress. While some specific threats have been identified against President-elect Joe Biden, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. President Trump declaring a state of emergency in Washington, D.C.
I want to continue to ask all of our residents to stay away from the downtown, to enjoy the inauguration activities virtually.
And ahead of that possible impeachment vote this week, a source tells ABC News more than 15,000 National Guard are on hand here in Washington to supplement law enforcement. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Washington.
Well, police are investigating several officers for not following procedure during last Wednesday's breach. According to Acting Capitol Police Chief Yogananda Pittman, investigators are reviewing video and other materials to look for violations. Representative Tim Ryan says at least 2 officers have been suspended. He claims one of them took a selfie with a rioter and the other directed people around the building while wearing a MAGA hat. Now, Capitol Police haven't said how many officers are under investigation. Meanwhile, the Justice Department has secured its first grand jury indictments against 2 suspects in connection with the riots at the Capitol. Meanwhile, following up on a report that we told you about yesterday, the FBI issuing a warning about plans for armed protests at all 50 state capitals. In Sacramento, officials and authorities preparing. We've already seen demonstrations near the state capitol devolve into violence in the past year, and the city's chief of police says they've been seeing violent demonstrations on a near weekly basis.
We have a big challenge ahead of us next week with what happened last week. It is very much a potential here, and we are doing everything we can to ensure that that doesn't happen.
City is planning on holding a community forum to discuss how police will handle demonstrations. Police chief says most of the recent violence has been caused by radicals looking to instigate. This, of course, comes after we saw some violent clashes here in San Diego. And coming up at 11:30, we're going to talk to a UCSD professor who's been tracking extremist groups in our region and about what can be done to address them and keep people safe. Meanwhile, this morning, the president visiting the U.S.-Mexico border for a final trip to see the border wall. Live look at Air Force One here in Austin, Texas. The visit is the president's first public appearance since that rally before the riot on Capitol Hill. Going to track his border visit and bring you any updates as they are warranted. Well, federal health officials said this morning that there is more vaccine supply than what's being requested by governors across the country. They also said today that changes are being made to make even more doses available. ABC 10 News anchor Mary McKenzie has the concerns about distribution in states like California.
We have seen now that the administration in the states has been too narrowly focused.
Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar says there's been great success with getting vaccines sent to states, but significant inconsistencies with how they're then being administered. Today, he announced all available doses in the U.S. would be released.
So we had been holding back second doses as a safety stock. We now believe that our manufacturing is predictable enough that we can ensure second doses are available for people from ongoing production.
The latest numbers show more than 25 million vaccines have been distributed so far across the country, but not quite 10 million people have been given their first dose. In California, more than 2.5 million vaccines are here, but less than 1 million people have received one. He also called on governors to start vaccinating everyone over the age of 65. But in California, we're still in phase 1A. That's just healthcare workers. In 1B, which Governor Newsom says he'd like to get to quickly, that adds in people over 75. Azar says they have teams at the federal level that they could deploy to states wanting to begin mass vaccination efforts.
It has been overly hospitalized so far in too many states. So we have the vaccine. We need the demand is there. We need to get these orders. We have supplies that have not yet been ordered of vaccine.
Azar also suggested that if states don't get their act together with regard to distribution, they may lose priority in getting vaccine doses, giving 2 weeks notice for them to plan and improve distribution and reporting.
This new system gives states a strong incentive to ensure that all vaccinations are being promptly reported, which they're currently not. And it gives states a strong incentive to ensure doses are going to work protecting people rather than sitting on shelves or in freezers.
Mary McKenzie, ABC 10 News.
And as part of that push to ramp up the rollout, Governor Newsom says that the state's expanding its list of eligible vaccine recipients. Pharmacists, dentists, National Guard members, and paramedics all now eligible. They want to get as many people that fall under the Tier 1A vaccinated before they move into Tier 1B, and say they'll start doing that as they get more doses. Board of Supervisors expected to vote on a proposal that would change the county's approach in dealing with the challenges that COVID-19 has presented to our area. ABC 10 News reporter Marie Cornell has been monitoring the meeting, and she is live at the County Administration Building. Marie?
Well, Jim, so far the Board of Supervisors, they've heard a report from county health officials giving them an update on the latest COVID-19 numbers as well as the latest on the vaccine rollout plan. Now, later today, they will also be discussing an issue that revolves around what was sent last week by Supervisors Nathan Fletcher and Nora Vargas. They sent a memo to the Board of Supervisors asking them to approve a plan that changes the focus of the county's COVID-19 efforts, relying on a collaborative, data-driven, and equitable response. The memo elaborates on what they believe is contributing to the surge in COVID-19 cases in the county, saying in part that the mixed messages from elected officials at all levels and their statements and actions are in direct contradiction to the public health order. Now, under this plan, they also want to focus on addressing racial inequities. This plan would place an emphasis on distributing future federal, state, and local funding based on data identifying communities that have been hit hard by COVID-19. Now, during this meeting, we've also learned that members of the public had signed in to address the board members regarding this issue. And again, remember, the board members are expected to vote on this issue today. Live outside the county admin building, Marie Cornell, ABC 10 News.
Marie, thank you very much. This morning, some students at the Escondido Union School District will go back to the classroom for in-person learning. They are part of the Phase 1 category, which includes special education and those in the state preschool programs. Last week, the board voted to push back their plans of returning to in-person classes for other students. They have a tentative restart date of February 2nd, but that will be discussed during their next board meeting a week from this Thursday. One of our ABC 10 News photographers out at OB Pier this morning, giving us a look at the damage there. A day after high surf damaged the pier. These photos taken by ABC 10 News viewer Jim Grant show us what it was like as the waves battered the pier yesterday. And damage during the storm in 2019 had the pier shut down for months. It was already closed before the damage this week, and now it's unclear how long the repairs may take.
It's very disheartening that once again it's going to be closed down and we're not going to be able to access it.
City says it needs the surf to die down before crews can access the damage to the pier and really get an assessment.